Hi, I'm Dr. Matthews. I'm here today to talk to you about goal setting, and primarily we're going to be talking about using the SMARTS acronym for goal setting. So a couple textbooks that I want to highlight here. So the ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine's Resources for the Exercise Physiologist, the second edition, chapter 12, and the ACSM's Guidelines for Exercise Testing and Prescriptions, the 10th edition, chapter 12, page 389. So I will say this one here, the ACSM Guidelines textbook, the SMARTS goal model is only talked about very, very briefly, so you're probably better off reading the Resources for the Exercise Physiologist textbook. But either way, if you want to find out where you can get these textbooks, you can scan these QR codes over here, and it's going to take you to a page where you can figure out how to buy them and see exactly which textbooks I'm talking about. All right, so you're going to want to get those textbooks though and read those in conjunction with this lecture. In the sequence for exercise prescription tasks that I've been talking about in all these lectures in this series, we are on this one here, the number 10, establishing goals. All right, so again, what we're going to be talking about is how to use the SMARTS goal model in order to create goals and help your client create goals for themselves. First thing we need to talk about is the difference between short and long-term goals. All right, so a short-term goal is something that you can see yourself achieving in the very near future. Oftentimes we're talking days, weeks, maybe up to a month and a half, something like that, but you're not talking several months here. All right, again, short-term goals are things that you should be able to achieve in the very near future. Long-term goals, on the other hand, are things that you can achieve in a longer period of time. Typically we're talking about several months up to about a year. If it's more than a year, most likely it's not a goal that you should be setting with your client, just because people aren't going to stick with things long enough if the goal is so big and so lofty that it takes several years. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be thinking several years down the road, but when it comes to exercise prescription and goal setting with your client, you really need to be making short-term and long-term goals, not these sort of ultra long-term goals that take several years. All right, you need something to keep them motivated, to keep them coming back, and to keep them exercising on a regular basis. I want to separate the idea of a goal and a desired outcome for the purpose of discussing the SMARTS goal model. All right, so a goal is something that you aim to do. It's a behavior. It's an action. All right, so if somebody says they want to, run every day for 30 minutes, that's a reasonable goal. It's an action. It's something you can check off a list and say you accomplished it, you did it, you completed your goal. All right, that is the idea of a good goal. A desired outcome, on the other hand, is different. A desired outcome is something that's a little harder to pin down. And usually when a client comes to you saying that they want to start exercising for XYZ, those reasons they give are not goals, they're desired outcomes. All right, so you have to kind of help them shape their goals in order to meet their desired outcomes. Anyway, so some examples of desired outcomes are have more energy, run faster, look better, things that it's really hard to say definitively you did it or you did not do it. All right, so again, a desired outcome is something you hope to happen, but not something you can guarantee, where a goal is something that you need to do in order to get yourself towards your desired outcomes. So for instance, if somebody wants to have more energy. All right, exercise is really good for increasing energy levels long term. In other words, if you exercise for a period of time, you'll eventually feel that you have more energy. But again, you can't really define what it means to have more energy because it's something that is perceived by the person. It's not something that's measurable. So your goal could be to exercise, 3 days a week at a vigorous intensity for 20 minutes and do that for, say, 2 months straight. And so you can check that box and say, yes, you did that. And then hopefully you'll get your desired outcome of having more energy. So that's kind of how this works. You make the goal in order to hopefully get the desired outcome. But again, a desired outcome isn't something that you can guarantee. A goal should be written in such a way where you can guarantee it. Again, if you can't have a checkbox saying you did it or did not do it, it is not a goal. So you need to work with your client in order to create proper goals. Okay, so I recommend using the SMARTS goal acronym. So that's SMARTS with an S at the beginning and at the end. So 2 S's. You're going to see a lot of variation on this acronym out there. So depending on the textbook you look at, depending on the source you look at, you're going to see these letters stand for different things. You're going to see some of them aren't going to have the S at the end. In fact, I think most probably won't have this last S. Some will have an ER at the end, so SMARTER goals. It's a very common acronym. It comes from more of a psychology perspective, so you're going to see all kinds of variations that the exercise scientists have kind of borrowed it and spliced it in different ways. But anyway, so let's get to the acronym. Again, each letter of this stands for something. So the first S stands for specific. So goals needs to be precise. In other words, it needs to be very clear what it is the goal is. And we'll talk about each one of these in more detail in the coming slides. It has to be measurable, which is what the M stands for, meaning there has to be something quantifiable, something you can, again, make a checkbox and say, did you do it? Did you not do it? Check for yes. The A stands for action oriented. That means it has to be something that is related to exercise, something that is easily prescribed. All right, so again, you can't prescribe having more energy. If that's the goal, that's not a goal, that's a desired outcome. Where action-oriented goals can be, run 3 days a week. That's an action. You're running. There's some sort of verb there. The R stands for realistic. So the goals need to be something that a person can actually achieve. It can't be this big lofty goal or something that's just not at all possible for the individual. You're not going to make a goal. I mean, this is absurd example, but you're not going to make a goal for somebody who's 5 feet tall to grow to be 6 feet tall. That's not something that you can actually achieve by willpower or by an action of some sort. So that's not something that's realistic. Timely. So T stands for timely. It needs to have some sort of constraint to it. Right. So what you don't want to do is have a goal that has no endpoint where you can say, did you achieve it or did you not achieve it? All right. So if you just say, I want to lose 10 pounds without having a time point where you need to lose that 10 pounds by, that goal can last, 2 months. It can last 10 years. And so if you don't have a time attached to it, it's really difficult to say when that goal is achieved or when it's not achieved. And it's important to also know when you don't achieve a goal, because that means that something that you were doing wasn't sufficient to get what you wanted out of it. All right, so you need to have that point in time where you need to check yourself or check your client and say, did you achieve it? Did you not achieve it? If you did not achieve it, here's what we need to do in order to make it a goal again and try to achieve it the next time. Or if you did achieve it, then you can revamp the goals and come up with new goals. All right, so there has to be a time point that's set in advance that you stop, you look at things, and you reassess. The last S here in the SMARTS goal acronym stands for self-determined. This means you do not just give the goal to your client. The client has to come in with some idea of what it is they're trying to get out of the exercise that you're going to prescribe for them, and then you need to help them shape that into a goal. All right, so in other words, you don't just say, okay, I think you need to be stronger, so your goal is to, do resistance training 3 days a week. It might be a good goal, but if it's not something they want and not something they came up with, then most likely they're not going to stick with it. So you need to work with them in what they want in order to create a goal together. So again, it has to have some degree of self-determination where the client chooses what they're going to try to achieve. All right, if not, then they're probably not going to stick with it. All right, so let's go ahead and go to each one of these letters and talk in a little more detail and give some examples here. Okay, again, the S stands for specific, the first S. Now, keep in mind all the examples. I'm going to give bad examples and I'm going to give better examples. They're partial goals. These are not complete SMARTS goals. We'll put them all together at the end here. But the phrases that you'll see on these next several slides are just emphasizing the portion of a SMARTS goal that meets whatever part of the acronym that we're currently talking about. So again, we're talking about being specific here. So somebody comes to you and says, I want to run more. All right, that's not specific. We don't. What does it mean to run more? Is running 2 days a week running more? Is running 5 days a week running more? Is running a mile a day running more? Or is running 10 miles a day running more? You need to be specific. All right, so I want to run more can be changed to something like, I will increase my running by 10 minutes per session. All right, that's something that's very defined, where again you can create a checkbox and check it yes or no. Did you achieve it? We'll do another example here, but I won't read all these. I'll let you read most of these on your own. All right, so let's do this one. I want to eat less. Okay, this is a very common goal for people who are trying to lose weight. I want to eat less. But what does it mean to eat less? Do you know how much you're eating now? If you don't know how much you're eating now, it's kind of hard to determine how you can eat less. Also, how much less? Do you want to, cut 50 calories out of your day? You want to cut 300 calories out of your day? What exactly does that mean? So again, a more specific version of this, and this is where you come in. They come in and they give you this sort of vague, half-formed goal, and you guide them towards a SMARTS goal that fits whatever it is their desired outcome is. So I want to eat less can become, I will reduce my calorie intake from 2100 kcals per day to 1900 kcals per day. All right, so you're cutting 200 calories a day out of their diets, and that'll likely lead to weight loss long term. All right, so again, this is the first S for specific. The M stands for measurable, which means it has to be something that you can quantify. Again, if you can't make it into a checkbox, it does not fit the SMARTS goal acronym. So something like, I want to feel better and have more energy. Again, that's not something that's measurable. I can't measure your feelings of being better or of energy levels. You can try to turn it into a measurement by having some sort of scale that they give you a number to, but it's very subjective. You're better off having something that's objective, that you can make a very easy measurement to and say, did you do it? Did you not do it? So again, the bad example here, I can make, I want to feel better and have more energy. I can turn that into, I will perform moderate intensity exercise meeting the minimum recommendations, which are things that we'll talk about in this class, so the minimum recommendations for health. And so you need to rephrase this. So notice those are very different from each other, but this over here is not really a goal. This is a desired outcome. You, as the exercise professional, know that if the person does moderate intensity exercise 5 days a week for 30 minutes or more, that they're probably going to feel better long term. They're going to have more energy. They might even lose a little weight, which will be helpful as well if they're somebody who's overweight. So you have the exercise knowledge. They just know what's kind of wrong in their lives and they want to change it. Right? So again, you take their desired outcome and you help them and you teach them and you morph it together as a team into a goal that is suitable for the SMARTS goal acronym. The A stands for action-oriented. So this means the goal has to be something that requires them to do something, to be physical. Because again, we're talking about exercise goals here. So the goals typically require them to actually be physically active. If it's a weight loss type of goal, it can also be an action that's sort of a not to do something, right? So I'm not going to have that extra creamer in my coffee every morning. That would also be an action, but it's kind of the absence of an action, I guess. But anyways, it has to be action oriented. So a bad example, something that they're probably going to come to you and say, I want to decrease my stress level. All right, so again, that's a desired outcome, not a goal. You need to work with them in order to shape it into a goal. And we know that exercise is good for decreasing stress levels. So you can help them work exercise into their life, into their day in different places. So in other words, you can split up their exercise routine into several mini exercise sessions throughout the day, and that'll hopefully give them a little break from work. It'll allow them to de-stress throughout their work day at several different times. So for instance, I want to decrease my stress can turn into, I will take 3 10-minute walk breaks during each work day to allow myself to reduce my stress level. All right, so you took a desired outcome and with them you turned it into a goal, something that is action oriented, something that is likely to help. There's no guarantee it's going to decrease stress, but it should help. All right, so and that's really all you can do as their trainer. The R stands for realistic. So the goal has to be something that you actually think that they can achieve. So again, the example here that they might come to you with is, I want to run a marathon next month. So for some people that might be realistic, but let's say this person's coming to you, has never run a day in their life, and they're saying they want to run a marathon a month from now. Could it happen? Yeah, it could for somebody who's not terribly out of shape. However, it probably isn't going to be a healthy goal. They're probably going to do too much. They might get hurt. They might get ill from overtraining. So it's not a realistic goal in a healthy, it's not a healthy and realistic goal, I'll say. So it's not something that you should encourage of your client. So to change this, so from I want to run a marathon next month, then you can kind of talk to them, say, well, that's not really realistic. It takes several months for somebody to train for a marathon. So instead of a marathon, why don't we try a 5K road race? 5K road races are very popular. They happen all over the place. The training isn't as much, so you can run it and probably actually do it in a month and feel good about it and not get hurt, not feel miserable after the race. And then after that, we can make a goal for a longer race, maybe a 10K or a 20K. So your example here as a better example will be, I will run my first 5K road race in 4 weeks and begin running races monthly after that. So in other words, you create that first initial, that short-term goal, and then within that, you allow yourself an opening to create longer-term goals for longer races in the future. All right, so again, be realistic with the goals. Don't allow them to give you something that's so crazy or so lofty or so big and that they're not ever going to achieve it. You want them to achieve it, because if they can't achieve it, then they're not going to stick with you. They're going to get unhappy. They're going to stop exercise, which is not good for them either. So you need to have sometimes some hard conversations about what is realistic and what is not realistic with your clients. The T stands for timely, which again just means putting some sort of deadline on the goal. Okay, so an example of something they might come to you with, this would be a fairly decent example in a lot of other ways, but let's say they come to you and say, I want to run on a treadmill 45 minutes, 4 days per week. That's pretty good. It's a goal that's well on its way to becoming a SMARTS goal, but it doesn't have that timetable on there, so it doesn't have that deadline of when they're going to achieve this. So when will you be able to run 45 minutes a day, 4 days a week? All right, if that's a month from now, or is that 6 months from now? Those are two very different goals. So you need to define the deadline. So you can change this to, I will run on a treadmill 45 minutes, 4 days per week by 3 months from today. All right, to accomplish this goal, I'm going to walk or run 45 minutes per day, increasing my running component weekly by 3 minutes, and I will be running the full 45 minutes within 15 weeks. All right, so sometimes it's good to build a little progression into the goal. All right, so they're going to be running they're going to be on a treadmill 45 minutes a day, 4 days a week, 3 months from now, and how they get to that is described also within the goal. Sometimes it's not necessary to have that progression in there. You can just have, I'm going to run 45 minutes, 4 days per week, 3 months from now, boom, done. That was probably enough. But having that progression gives a little more detail, a little more precision to the goal, and so the client understands what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So that's a good thing. The last letter of the acronym is the second S, and that stands for self-determined. All right, so a lot of times what's going to happen is the trainer is going to come to the client and say, this is what you're going to do. All right, and that's not good, because it might not be what the client wants to do. It might be using an exercise they don't enjoy, and just generally speaking, they're probably not going to stick with it very long, and they might not stick with you as a trainer. All right, so it's bad for them because they don't get to exercise throughout, from that point forward, helping them become a healthier individual, and it's bad for you because you lose a client and a source of income. All right, so a trainer might go to the client and say, the treadmill is easy. It's an easy exercise. It's to prescribe, so it's something a lot of people like, so that's what I'm going to have you do. That's not what it should be. It should be something that's a back and forth between the trainer and client. So you can say something like, there are several modes of exercise you can do to improve your cardiorespiratory fitness and to train for cardiorespiratory fitness. What are you interested in doing? And then you give some examples: treadmill, exercise bike, you can swim, you can do the elliptical, and let them help you in order to create an exercise prescription that they're going to enjoy. So let's put this together in a sort of a step-by-step format of how I suggest that you create a SMARTS goal. And this is just my personal suggestion. All right, so number one here, ask your client their desired outcome and try to figure out a timeline for that. All right, so if somebody comes to you and says, I want to run a 5K road race in under 30 minutes, 17 weeks from now. All right, so in other words, they have a race already picked out that, maybe it's a spring 5K race that they want to do, and they want to do it under 30 minutes. All right, so figure out that desired outcome. That's your first step. All right. And the second and third step here can be done in either order, so you can switch these if you want. I like to think about the weekly volume of exercise first. If you like to think about the FIT principle first, so the frequency, the intensity, and the type, the time of the exercise, so the duration and the type of exercise. If you like to think of that, the FIT part of that first, you can switch these so you can do 3 before 2. It doesn't matter. But let's just do them in order here. So next one I would do is number 2, determine the appropriate volume of exercise they need to do in order to have a high likelihood of achieving that desired outcome. So again, being able to run that 5K road race in under 30 minutes, 17 weeks from now. So knowing that that takes a lot of training to be able to go under 30 minutes, that's a sub 10 minute mile pace, which for a lot of people is difficult. You need to figure out the training. So maybe an appropriate training is going to be running 150 minutes per week at a vigorous intensity exercise. All right, so probably needs to be vigorous intensity because they have some sort of fitness related goal here, which is the time portion of that. If it was just complete the 5K, then and they can walk, run it, it doesn't matter, then I wouldn't be as worried about the intensity here. All right, so but anyways, we get an idea of the volume they need, probably around 150 minutes per week of vigorous intensity exercise, and that should help them get pretty close to achieving this desired outcome. All right, so the next thing I would do is come up with the FIT portion of the training. So the frequency, which I would probably say maybe about 4 days per week. The intensity of the exercise, I would say 60% of heart rate reserve. That's the bottom of the vigorous intensity range. The time or duration, so how long they exercise each time, 35 to 40 minutes per session, with a little flexibility there. We'll shift it up day by day, maybe a little less than 35, maybe a little more than 40 sometimes. And so basically what I'm doing here is I'm trying to figure out how many minutes per day they need to exercise in order to get 150 minutes per week in 4 days. All right, and then the last part of the FIT principle here, so the T for type, so type of exercise, you need to have them running. All right, so I'm choosing running for specificity purposes. The person wants to run a 5K road race, so the specificity principle tells me they need to run during their training in order to do that effectively. So number 4 here, find out what they are currently doing for exercise. So maybe this person is running 3 days a week, doing 40% of heart rate reserve, which is the bottom of the moderate intensity zone, and they're doing it 20 minutes per session. So I already said running there. All right, so you need to know where they're currently at so you can figure out how far they need to go from where their current status is to their potential goal status. And so once you know all this information, now you need to determine whether or not the goal that you're trying to set with them, which is essentially this right here, whether that is realistic or not. So what I think is a smart way of doing that or a good way of doing that is to come up with sort of a timeline for it. So figure out how many weeks they need to do each part of the progression in order to get to their goal, their action-oriented goal, in order to achieve that. And if it's possible for them to do that in the time period that they have said they want to do it in, which is 17 weeks. So maybe the first week you're going to increase the exercise from 3 to 4 days per week. So you'll boost the frequency first. Then for 4 weeks, maybe you'll slowly increase them from 20 minutes per day to 30 minutes per day. So you'll give yourself 4 weeks to do that. So now we're up to 5 weeks. Then you say, okay, maybe I need 6 weeks in order to get them from 40% of heart rate reserve to 60% of heart rate reserve. So boosting from moderate intensity exercise to vigorous intensity exercise. Then you add in a couple extra weeks there where you're not going to increase the intensity, the time, or the frequency, just to kind of give them a chance to adjust to the training loads and the changes in training loads. And so then we have here basically what I had written up here. So 3 weeks maintenance, basically maintaining the same exercise prescription in order to hopefully get the exercise benefits, the fitness benefits out of it, and then maybe a week taper right before the race. All right, so you add all that up. So we have 1 week, we have 4, so that's 5 weeks, another 6 here, so now we're up to 11 weeks, 12 and 13 weeks, 16 weeks, 17 weeks. All right, so this equals up to 17 weeks, which means their goal is just barely achievable, or their desired outcomes just barely achievable. And so all the stuff that you've written in here is realistic, and it's something that you can put together into a SMARTS goal. So let's go ahead and put it all together. All right, so again, know their desired outcome, know their current training, and then come up with their SMARTS goal from that. So the desired outcome was to run a 5K road race in under 30 minutes, 17 weeks from now. The current training that the individual is doing is 20 minutes, 3 days per week at 40% of heart rate reserve. And your SMARTS goal, so that's going to be, I will run at 60% of heart rate reserve, 30 minutes, 4 days per week, 13 weeks from now, and I will maintain that for 1 month. All right, so that gives you that period of time to sort of get the advantageous training effects from the exercise before the race. All right, so again, 13 weeks plus the month, so that's your 17 weeks. That equals out what they wanted for their desired outcome. So this SMARTS goal hopefully will get them what they want in their desired outcome. Remember though, a desired outcome is not something that you can guarantee. The part here that we really can't guarantee is this 30 minutes. There's no way of saying whether or not they're going to actually go faster than 30 minutes for a 5K or not, just because they did this training. You think that you can put together an exercise program that's pretty good, that most likely will improve their fitness and hopefully get them there, but it's impossible for anybody to know whether you actually will achieve a high enough fitness in order to run this race at that pace. But you can at least do your best to create a SMARTS goal that will hopefully get them there. If nothing else, they'll probably be able to run the 5K. Maybe they'll run it in 32 minutes, and they won't get their goal, but they will be reasonably satisfied. And you can make another goal to, maybe 8 weeks from there to run another 5K road race and keep training them to try to get under 30 minutes. So you can make a second goal to try to achieve what you didn't achieve in the first goal. All right, so that's essentially how the SMARTS goal acronym works. So again, remember that the SMARTS goal acronym is going to be a little different depending on what source you're looking at, so which textbook or website that you're looking at. But they're all pretty similar and have a lot of overlap between the concepts within them. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, you can put those in the comment section below and I'll try to get back to you. Otherwise, please come back and watch another video. Thanks.